You know, there's a common maxim, if you will, in the film industry that Blazing Saddles is probably one of the funniest movies ever made. Problem is, in today's society, in today's culture, in today when everyone is highly offended and nobody has a sense of humor about anything, Mel Brooks probably couldn't make that movie today and release it. He would probably be excoriated by any number of self interest, self victimizing groups. And that's kind of a shame. Today's movie is like that. Cinematic class is about to begin, and your professor is in. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Fiore, your cinematic professor and purveyor of cinematic truth. The name of today's lesson plan is 79 parts. And I got to tell you, thank God this movie is an independent movie. Because if one of the big time studios had tried to release this, God knows what they would have done to it. Probably edits here, and it would come out not funny at all. Now, a lot of the big studio comedies center around what we call bathroom humor because that's kind of universal and you can do that without offending too many people. This one, forget it, the gloves are off. Especially if you're Italian or if you're Irish. This movie does not do you good at all. Well, let me tell you a little bit about it. First off, the whole movie was shot on 16 millimeter, which is a rarity nowadays. And as a result, it has a very old-fashioned feel to it. The color is very subdued. The shots actually look a little grainy, but that's all okay, and it works well because this movie happens in 1979. So we have ourselves a period piece here, and the cinematography and the look of the film fits that time period. If you remember a movie called The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight, it was probably, a mockery of the old Italian mafia. This one isn't quite as limited. It's a mockery of gangsters in particular, and most of them are either Irish or Italian in this movie. And it's like watching Don Rickles, those of you who are old enough to remember the comedian, who I happened to see in Vegas one time, and my jaw hurt from laughing so hard. But I digress. It's that type of humor, and it's not joke humor. Okay, there are no jokes in this. The humor comes in the way the characters are stereotyped. I mean, it's just laughable because it's the way people were back in the late 70s, but then it's exaggerated and it's gone to extremes. Now, they've done something very clever in this. The main cast is comprised of people who you probably don't know. But what they do is they infuse Eric Roberts, Tony Lubianco, Sandra Barnhart, stars like that you will recognize, and quality stars, and they actually only have cameo roles. They appear in a couple real quick scenes and then they're gone. But that's enough to give a little bit of gravitas to this movie, and I don't know. I think it worked out pretty well. Some people behind this thing to it that I think you should know about. I'll tell you a little bit about the story first. It's all about Jack Anderson, who is trying to graduate law school, but he runs into some problems because his father is incarcerated for embezzlement. Now, he seems to think his father is innocent. We all know better. And as a result, he needs money to finish his last semester. Well, he goes to the banks, and naturally the banks are the banks, and they turn him down. So finally, his friend Gino says, look, I know a guy, and he takes him to a loan shark, okay? And that's where this rather inept group of gangsters comes into play, and Jack manages to borrow money from the loan shark, which is then lost at a racetrack. Story. There have been a lot of them made like this, and this one certainly fits the bill as well. And then before you know it, Jack and Gino find themselves wrapped up in a conspiracy for immigration. So we have something that's, apparently there are a couple of Italians living in the community who are there without a green card, and they become involved in a scam to try to keep some people there, and as a result, fake marriages and all this kind of, it's crazy stuff the way it unfolds, and along the way they really do make fun of a lot of different traits of the Irish and both the Italians as well. Standouts in this are Johnny Solo as Gino. He does a really good job. And Daniello Mastropietro. She does a nice job of playing the love interest, Anna. But, there are a couple of scenes when, I don't know if they were doing some Foley work. I suspect maybe they were. And they couldn't get her back in to do the Foley work, so they kind of substituted someone. There's a couple of scenes where she loses her accent. And that accent is pretty thick throughout the rest of the movie. So I'm getting I would suspect that happened in Foley work, and she probably wasn't available. Ari Taub is the man behind this movie, and it's pretty safe when you're not Italian and you're not Irish to go ahead and make fun of those people. So some people may stand up and say, "Yeah," but I thought it was awfully funny. I started watching this movie, and I didn't read any of the blurbs or anything, and then I started finding myself chuckling, and I said, I don't know if they intended this to be a comedy, but I'm laughing my ass off. Afterwards, I did a little research on it and saw what they were trying to do, and yeah, it was intended to be a good thing because it's funny. I mean, the characterizations they do of these people are they're just pulled out to the exaggerated extreme, and of course, that is one of the 5 components of classic comedy is exaggeration on traits and what have you. So there you go. The movie is called 79 Parts. Now, if you're one of these Weasley people that, how could he say something like that? I'm so offended. Sit your ass down and don't even bother watching this movie, because it'll upset you on all kind of fronts. But if you're not, if you got a little thicker skin and you can take a good laugh at yourself. Hell, this movie is making fun of Italians. I'm Italian. I'll be the first one to jump up if somebody says something out of turn when we're out in the social thing. But in the movie context, it was funny. It was really funny. Now that you have learned what you have learned, you're ended your lesson.